Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Western and Southern Area Planning Committee on Thursday, the 2nd of October 2025. For the benefit of the public attending today or watching on the live stream, I'm Councillor Bolwell, Chair of this committee, and my Vice Chair is Councillor Isenk. The meeting is being live streamed and will be available to view on the Council website after the meeting. By attending this meeting, you consent to being filmed. Can I remind everyone that when you are speaking, please speak directly into the microphones so that you can be clearly heard and seen. The Planning Committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public is invited. All attendees must comply with the ruling of the Chair. They must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance. To support this, please switch off your mobile phones or select silent mode for the duration of the meeting. And those using Teams, please ensure microphones are on mute and your device volume is set to 0 to maintain audio quality. Only those that have registered to speak in accordance with the speaking protocol will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. That will be limited to the first 3 people objecting to and the first 3 people supporting the application to have registered along with the parish council and ward member. No material is to be circulated to members of the committee. We have 4 applications to determine today. The case officer will be invited to present the report and recommendations. Next, I will invite members of the public who have registered to speak with the Democratic Services Officer before the deadline to address the committee in the following order: public against, public support, the applicant or agent, the town or parish council, and finally ward members. Each speaker has a maximum of 3 minutes. Following on from the registered public speakers, the planning officers will have the opportunity to address any salient points they wish to clarify, and committee members will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the planning officers before moving on to debate. When questions from members have finished, I will move the committee on to debate the application. For clarification, I will not accept any proposal until we have moved to debate. When we go into councillor questions and debate for the benefit of the public watching, can members state their name and ward when addressing the meeting? I have been advised that Weymouth Town Council members cannot take part in the debate or vote for the application shown as item 7 on the agenda, and as it has been submitted by Weymouth Town Council. Therefore, as these councillors will have to leave the chamber for item 7, I am moving it to the front of the agenda to ensure that we accord it, as I may personally have to leave the meeting should it continue into an afternoon session. I will now conduct a roll call of members present. Myself and Councillor Isenk are here. Councillor Borden.
Good morning, Chairman. Present.
Good morning, Belinda. Councillor Matt Bell.
Present.
Thanks, Matt. Councillor Simon Christopher. Thanks, Simon. Councillor David Northam. Thank you, David. Councillor Louis O'Leary.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you, Louis. Councillor Pete Roper. Councillor David Shortell. Good morning, David. And Councillor Kate Weller.
Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning, Kate. I will now conduct a roll call of officers, well, not a roll call of officers, sorry. I will now introduce the officers that are supporting us today. Officer Anne Collins. Thank you, Anne. Councillor Phil Crowther, who's legal business partner, regulatory. Katrina Trevitt, development manager, team leader. Nicola Yates, conservation and design officer. Robert Parr, planning officer. Josh Kennedy, democratic services officer. And Louis Wicks, democratic services officer apprentice. Apologies. Could you give the apologies, please, Josh?
Thank you. Yes, so today we've received apologies from councillors Craig Monks and Paul Kimber.
Thank you, Josh. We'll now move on to item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Members, do you have any declarations of interest you wish to make? And I assume the 4 members that are aware they have to leave the chamber will be doing so now. Any other declarations of interest, please? Councillor Roper.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Pete Roper, Portland Ward. I just need to declare that I've been involved in discussions with the applicant at Portland Town Council surrounding discussions regarding the lease. I've had no discussions at all at planning level as part of the planning committee, so I recognise that I'm coming at this with an open mind.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor Roper. So you'll be staying and voting and debating. Okay, thanks very much. Item 3, minutes. To agree and sign the minutes of the meeting held on Thursday, the 4th of September 2025. Is everybody happy they're a correct record of the meeting? If so, I will sign it later. Thank you very much. Public participation. Item 4. Members of the public registered to speak can be given the opportunity to speak now if they wish to, or wait for their item to be presented. After consultation, all speakers have indicated that they wish to wait until their application is introduced. That is correct, yes? Thank you. In that case, we'll move on to item 7, which has been brought forward, obviously, on planning applications. It's P/LBC/2025/04317, War Memorial, the Esplanade, Weymouth, DT4 7RN. And the four Weymouth councillors are leaving the chamber now. So thank you very much. We'll get them back when we finish item 7. Presented by Nicola Yates. There are no public speakers. So Nicola, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. So it's application regarding the War Memorial, the Esplanade in Weymouth, and the application is to install 3 new Portland stone plaques to be fixed to the existing panels of the memorial. This listed building consent application has been brought to Planning Committee as the structure to which the application relates is owned by Dorset Council. The application site is the American War Memorial, highlighted in red on the site location plans. The memorial is Grade 2 listed and is located within the Weymouth Town Centre Conservation Area in a prominent position along the promenade opposite the Royal Hotel. This memorial commemorates the American servicemen who passed through Weymouth to the beaches of Normandy in the Second World War. The memorial is constructed of Portland stone and comprises of an octagonal pedestal with 4 main load-bearing panels and 4 intermediate panels, one of which is a timber access door. The memorial was first listed in 2009, and the listing description states, for the following principal reasons: as a dignified piece of symbolist imaginatively sited on the seafront, it is a poignant reminder of the sacrifice of American servicemen during World War II. It has group value, with a number of listed buildings, including the Weymouth Cenotaph to the northeast. The proposal seeks to install 3 new Portland stone plaques due to the existing plaques suffering from exposure to the elements. For identification purposes only, the panels are Ranger, We Remember, and Unveiled. The latter 2 would be fixed to the existing panels of the memorial. It is understood from the submitted documentation that it is not possible to remove these existing panels due to structural stability, and therefore it is proposed that the new panels will be fixed to the existing. The former number, shown as Ranger, is already an applied panel, and therefore this would be removed and replaced with a new like-for-like stone panel. The new panels would be Portland stone. The inscriptions for each panel would be cut and enamelled black as the existing panels. The proposed works were discussed at pre-app stage, to which there was no objection to the proposal in principle. I note that comments have been received from the War Memorials Trust regarding the proposal, and suggesting recording and monitoring in the first instance, and raising concerns regarding the exposure of the flush-fitted panels. In response, further supporting information was received from the agent detailing previous works and monitoring, and further information regarding the requirements for flush-fitting panels. In this instance, it is considered that the agent has provided clear and convincing justification for the proposed works. So the key points are: the proposal is necessary to preserve and protect the listed structure. Key point 2, the proposal is considered positive, enabling the panels to be easier to read and would not cause detrimental harm to the listed structure, nor detrimentally alter the appearance of this heritage asset. And key point 3, the proposal would not impact the setting of the neighbouring listed buildings, nor the character and appearance of the conservation area. It is concluded that the proposal would not be detrimental to the special architectural, historic and group value of this heritage asset, and therefore would not result in harm to the significance of the listed structure. The proposal would not detrimentally alter the appearance of the heritage asset, and therefore would not result in harm to the neighbouring listed buildings, nor the special character and local distinctiveness of the Weymouth Town Centre conservation area. In reaching this conclusion, the proposal has been assessed with regard to the relevant policies. We are therefore looking to grant approval subject to conditions which would be commencement within 3 years, in accordance with the approved plans and documents. Thank you, Chair. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much for that, Nicola. Members, do you have any questions for the officer, please? I see no hands going up. I will say that one of the Weymouth Town Council members was concerned over the fitting of of 2 of the panels that are going to be flush, but I think she was happy with that. So I have no questions either. In that case, members, I'm looking for a proposal and a seconder, please.
Councillor Neil Ising, Egerton Ward. I'd like to propose, Chair, that we accept this proposal in line with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? I think Councillor Borden actually just beat you there, Councillor Roper. Right, so we have a proposer and a seconder for to approve in accordance with the officer's recommendation. All those in favour, raise your hands. And that is unanimous, so we've got 6 in favour, none against and no abstentions. Thank you very much. We will now move to agenda item 5. We will pause until the members have returned, please. So if we just pause the meeting for a few minutes. Thank you. Thank you. For the benefits of the members of the public, all 4 councillors have returned to the chamber, and we are now ready for item 5, which is P/FUL/2025/03447 Buckland Campsite, Buckland House Lane, Buckland Ripers, DT3 4FT. It'll be presented by Katrina Trevitt. Over to you then, Katrina, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So yes, this application has been submitted to use this application site as camping from the 1st of May to the 30th of September only annually, as an extension to the season permitted by earlier planning permissions in 2018 and 2021. There having been previous express planning permission for camping between the 15th of May and the 31st of August in any one year. The application site is northeast of Buckland Ripers Village, just to the south of Nottington Lane. You can see it here, edged very crudely in red, just above Buckland House, which falls within the same ownership as the applicant. And you can see here the main body of Buckland Ripers Village to the west, southwest. The application site in terms of the red line area has not changed beyond the 2018 and 2021 permissions. So this is for the same covered site to extend that camping season. You can see the rest of the land edged here in blue, the pockets which then go towards Nottington Lane and then land to the south around Buckland House. The constraints is it's outside of a DDB. There's some surface water pockets, which I'll mention later. 2 rights of way, which I'll also mention later, cross the entrance to the lane and run along this triangular piece of land, which is actually a designated SNCI, which is locally important. It is part of a higher ecological network. In paragraph, it was drawn to our attention that in the committee report, paragraph 14.8, that this site did not abut neighbouring properties, but the red line site does, with the access into that camping area, does abut to a small section, and obviously the land owned by the applicant genuinely in blue, this neighbour here to the south of that blue triangular piece. So in terms of distances and separation from those in the village, whilst the actual dwelling houses are over 100 metres, it's approximately about 75 metres to the nearest garden area of Hollybrow, which is this neighbour here on the northern stretch of the kind of linear form of Buckland Ripers Village. You can see the area outlined in red. You can see the extent of tree boundary and hedgerow protection in terms of the boundaries of the site. And you can also see where that access way runs in through to the campsite there. Here's just some photos from the site from having been out and had a look. I would say it's very well upkept. It's high quality on immediate views. Having viewed the site from Nottington Lane, it's very well screened actually by hedgerows, I think deceivingly so, as in I expected there to be more visual impact actually from the site than what could actually be gained. And I think that's because the actual red line site is buffered by another section of field just to its north, which then has further hedgerow, which then lines Nottington Lane. But you can see the spread of that site here on the northern side of the track. And then we're just circling around. This isn't actually the camping area, but it's just showing you the setting. I think what's important to also point out is that beyond this fenced area and hedgerow is also further SNCI, and that will come up in the presentation in a moment. And here's the ancillary shop and storage barn, which also belongs to the site, but the red line area extends as far as as this kind of patch of grass here. This is just to mention and go back to the flood risk, which has been identified with the site. So you can see there's a couple of pockets here which I think are in line with the hedgerow, but there was obviously, I think, some previous pond on the site previously. However, visitors are directed away from staying in that area, but it's considered that actually there is no significant impact in terms of those visiting the site in terms of surface water. So key considerations. I'm going to run through these, but I've got various things that I actually need to run through and confirm with the committee afterwards. So I will prolong discussion on these points. So in terms of the principle of development, you've got the fallback position of camping already permitted from the 15th of May to the 31st of August in any 1 year, 109 days. This scheme extends from the 1st of May to the 30th of September in any 1 year, so a further 44 days being applied for as of this application, so 122 days in total. And that's also beyond that the applicant, I think, exercises their rights under the GPDO to have permitted camping for 60 days on other land that does not form part of this application site. So that's important to bear that actually 60 days could spread into the entirety of September, should it wish, or it could spread into the first 2 weeks of May. So essentially, camping can take place at those times already through a mixture of what's been permitted by express planning permission and what is granted by virtue of the GPDO. In terms of amenities, so, and I'm going to broaden on this in a moment. No noise complaints pursued, some records regarding music and people noise in 2022. Only 2 complaints in the last 3 years regarding fire, smoke in August 2025. The applicant has confirmed terms and conditions on on-site warden 24/7 during camping times to regulate conditions of use. In terms of lighting, low-level lighting on the toilet shower block only. External lighting is restricted by virtue of the Biodiversity Mitigation Plan from 2018, which is again conditioned. In terms of ecology, both the SNCI areas are fenced and gated. The applicant has made contact with Dorset Wildlife Trust to carry out monitoring, which actually happened yesterday afternoon, so I've got an update in terms of that. A natural environment team raised no objections. And that's on the basis of limited access to the SNCI, however. I will expand more. Highways, no objection raised. And landscape, no significant impact. The site's well screened in short distant views. And even when trying to gauge wider views, having gone up myself to Hardy's Monument to try and look across and see if I could actually pick out this site, which I know, obviously when you've got a variety of tented camping on site, it is going to be more visual, but it's so distant and so pepper potted amongst other kind of infrastructure and buildings and hedgerows and various elements that I think it would be hard to distinguish. I think also it's important to point out that you've got Tatton Farm, which is a camping site to the west, and you've also got Higher Moor Farm to the east. So essentially, this site is also enclosed by other camping. So I just wanted to draw attention to some of the terms and conditions which the Buckland campsite issue in terms of anybody who wishes to stay on the site, which I think is really important. These are available on the website as well. And it's to convey really how they really try to regulate how the tourists and people staying on the site conduct themselves in terms of whether they stay. There's various things about being mindful of respecting the environment, aiming to arrive before 6 o'clock, and definitely by 9 p.m. to minimise disruption to the wider environment and to other campers. They reinforce that movement of vehicles should be an absolute minimum between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. And there must be no loud or disrupting noise after 10 p.m. or before 8 a.m. Use of car stereos is not permitted on site. And these just generally kind of indicate, you know, how they try to regulate that, and various rules in terms of campfires and barbecues, which again, that will come up in a moment when I re-go over the issues. So in terms of things that I'd like to kind of broadly discuss, having had some further correspondence, and I think there's really important things that need to be brought to the members' attention. There is no dispute that clearly this site has an impact on neighbouring amenity, given the strength of local feeling and those speaking at committee today. I think we realise that. However, planning amenity impacts are based on circumstances of the case and the evidence available. The degree of harm in planning terms balanced with what can already occur, and essentially that impact on amenity is set at a really high bar. There have been some reports of the noise from people and music in 2022. There have been the 2 complaints from 2 different individuals to Environmental Protection in August 2025 over the same dates, which is the 18th to the 20th of August, I think around the bank holiday weekend. These complaints were based on barbecues, cooking smells, toxic chemicals from a barbecue, and smoke occurrence in hot weather when windows cannot be opened, noting that the wind was in the wrong direction. And I think that's another point to just pick up on, is that the campsite is actually northeast of Buckland Ripers Village, which we saw on the location plan. The prevailing wind direction is southwest, so blowing away from the campsite to the northeast, not actually towards the village. But that, you know, that doesn't mean to say that when the wind's in the wrong direction, things don't blow in their direction, obviously. However, it's not unreasonable to expect residents of the village to cook barbecues or have fire pits in the summer. It's unclear how this site is evidenced to be worse than that. So having gained a view from Environmental Protection, they confirm there's no tangible evidence to take action under their legislation in terms of amenity loss or nuisance. Fires do not come under their control, but intrusion of smoke does. However, no consistent complaints have been submitted and no diaries of events have been submitted. They cannot take into account cumulative impact, but only a singular individual impact. Therefore, if a neighbour were to complain about another neighbour having a barbecue and smoke arising, then they're able to pursue if a nuisance is evidenced, but not for a temporary use impact, essentially. The campsite has acted reasonably in establishing conditions of use and have a warden 24/7, which is possibly reflected in the limited number of complaints generally, which Environmental Protection considered a low number in terms of the general kind of camping type complaints that they receive in any one year and for particular sites. But I think when I come back to that high bar of impact on amenity, I think when we're considering it, you know, we are taking into account that evidence from Environmental Protection. We're taking into account the distance, it being actually over 100 metres from a neighbouring dwelling house. Appreciate it's not such a significant distance from gardens, and you know, it's roughly about 75 metres at probably the closest point. And you know, essentially, there is nothing in our amenity policy terms that would merit a recommendation of refusal in terms of this. In terms of the SNCI, I know that there were various comments in terms of how this was going to be impacted. So definition of this SNCI, so special nature conservation interest, essentially neutral grassland habitat, a site of nature conservation interest, combination of plant species where it would be expected to be cut short at times to regenerate as part of overall management. The lack of monitoring so far is not a breach on this site within the red line area. The previous biodiversity plan condition requested the site surveyed only with no requirement to mitigate or to long-term manage the SNCI. So the applicant wasn't forced to commit to a long-term management plan of the SNCIs. It was purely for it to go and be monitored with no actual resulting effects afterwards. The application is not granting consent to use the SNCI, and we cannot control how the landowner manages it. There is no legal requirement, as it's only recognised as locally important. An application cannot be refused on the basis of non-compliance with an area approval or biodiversity plan. It has to be on a material reason based on what is being applied for currently, and there is no material impact on the SNCI. However, as an update, Dorset Wildlife Trust attended the site yesterday and met with the applicant. They can confirm that having met with the applicant on site and been able to discuss and review the condition and management of the SNCI, they do not have any further concerns that the proposed camping extension would cause any harm to the interest of the grassland. So we have agreed that Dorset Wildlife Trust will undertake a monitoring survey next year and continue to liaise with the applicant over the suitable management of the site. Now we move on to the next element, although I think I just want to draw attention to the plans because I just indicate again there's SNCI areas, so the triangle here at the top and then the wider area to the bottom, but you can see how they're outside of that red line area. And I'm going to talk about, well, I'm just drawing attention to the public rights of way again, which weave over the access track, and there's one that actually leads through that triangular SNCI at the top, but that's been reviewed and monitored by Dorset Wildlife Trust with the applicant yesterday. This is just a view of that triangular piece at the top, so you can see it's gated and fenced off. You can see the stile here, which then leads through to another stile onto Nottington Lane, although it's a bit of an oddity in terms of the actual access track through to the farm is also public right of way. I presume it's for safety that you might choose to take that way and go over the stile and stay away from the traffic, but in some ways it would make sense to just walk along the lane. But anyway, it's how that public right, or those public right of ways are interconnected at that point. So going back to biodiversity. So I know there was concerns about the fact that we'd had a biodiversity plan in 2018, which hadn't been redrafted or extended with the open extended season. So I went back to the Natural Environment team and say that regarding comments in relation to how a 2018 biodiversity plan can be taken forward and still remain applicable even though the season is longer. So this is what I'm trying to answer. The blunt answer is that the actual use of the site is not particularly impactful. The habitat is of a low distinctiveness, with the grass essentially maintained as a playing field, with the grass cut short. And whilst there's likely to be a bit of damage to the habitat, that will regenerate itself within the closed season 7 months in any event. So essentially that's why they haven't asked for the biodiversity plan to be reevaluated and renewed, because essentially there is no need, and the biodiversity plan and things that were monitored and put in place in terms of that, including the external lighting, are being brought forward again. In terms of some other matters that were raised, there was a comment in relation to car exhaust fumes, traffic passing at 5 miles per hour at the bottom of an extensive garden, Hollybrow, which again was that neighbour in the northernmost part of the village. Given the low speed and depth of screening between, there would not be significant reason to object in planning terms. It cannot actually be distinguished between car fumes of the campsite users or car fumes from Nottington Lane. So essentially that could come from anywhere because you have got that main road kind of running past the site. There will always remain a conflict between users of the public right-of-way and access users, given they run along the same road, regardless of it being a campsite or not. However, it's a relatively short stretch of access, which is in this photo, which then just curves around to Nottington Lane. And no ability to pass or to linger particularly, so car movement would be experienced quite quickly, I think. I think once you commit to that lane, it's quite obvious that actually there is nowhere to pass until you actually move further into the farm. So I think, for purposes of not trying to get stuck or having to reverse out onto Nottington Lane, you'd move through without kind of lingering and expending car exhaust fumes. Previous conditions, there was comments on these and why they weren't being taken forward. Having reviewed the toilet block in situ, that is not as agreed under WDD 18-2905, and so that permission and its conditions do not limit it, and therefore that's why it's not brought forward, because it's actually different to what was previously agreed in 2018. The use, opening hours and period of opening dates of the reception shop is still restricted under the 2024 permission and is not being reviewed as part of this scheme. So therefore, should the applicants wish to alter the extent of that shop reception being open beyond the 15th of May to the 1st of September, they will need to apply separately. And also condition 3, so dates of use and holiday use only, remains ongoing, and there's no reason why the wording cannot remain the same with the dates being altered. It is an enforceable condition. Other matters also raised include the recreational impact to the Cheslin Fleet, Spa and Sack, which is mitigated fully, and as such there is a neutral impact in terms of this respect. The economic value, the granting of permission will encourage more visitors to the site and economic benefits to the local community and tourism economy of the area. I think it was indicated that actually extending the season will not attract more visitors to the area. In terms of referencing policy Econ 7, I note what's said about extension, intensification or reorganisation of existing sites, and they must clearly demonstrate that the development forms part of a long-term management plan to improve the quality and appearance of the accommodation and site. And in terms of that, and in my view, this scheme is not an expansion of the site, intensification of units on the site or reorganisation of the site, and therefore this criterion is passed. So even so, a landscape and visual quality of the site is acceptable with no need to improve its quality or appearance beyond how it runs currently, and therefore no management plan is required. And I promise I'm coming to the final part, the Chickerell Neighbourhood Plan. I think it's just to focus that specifically says that development should support the local economy through its existing businesses. It's a key aim and objective of the Chickerell Neighbourhood Plan by encouraging new enterprises and facilities which enhance commercial effectiveness and employment opportunities. And Chickerell should be a place where businesses want to locate and grow. And on the flip side of that, I know it's quite orientated in terms of landscape impact, but again, going back to my view in terms of how well screened the site actually is, I feel it kind of fits within that policy context of the neighbourhood plan. So to conclude, all matters have to be weighed up against each other, and whilst there is not considered to be significant harm to the landscape, biodiversity, SNCI, highway safety, the Cheslin Fleet, Spa and Sack protected site, but some localised impact to neighbours that is not evidenced to be significantly detrimental to merit refusal beyond matters which can either take place already or be experienced by neighbouring properties in the village. In some instances, it is considered that the benefits of drawing more visitors to the area which support the tourism economy, local employment, local facilities and services weigh in the balance in favour of the scheme being supported. And therefore, the recommendation is either A, to delegate authority to the service manager for development management and enforcement and the area manager for the Southern and Western team to grant planning permission subject to the completion of a legal agreement to secure the contribution to the Cheslin Fleet European site with the conditions as outlined in the committee report, or recommendation B, refuse permission for the reasons set out below if the agreement is not completed within 6 months. So this is basically a fallback recommendation should that agreement not come forward initially. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Katrina. Very detailed and lots of explanations there. So I now move on to the public speakers. So we go with public against, and it'll be John Perrott first, please. John, you have 3 minutes. You can change the order by all means, as long as it's an objector speaking next. Yes. Who do we have, sorry?
Hello, I'm Sue Bonham-Lovett, and thank you, John, because I have to get away to care for my parents. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to address you all today. I didn't realise that here's such a good sales pitch for the campsite. I'd vote for it myself. I should be here with a much bigger gang of neighbours today. There should be loads of us with banners and placards, but they aren't here. They've given up. There's no complaints in anymore because they've given up listening. They're not being heard. They think their voices haven't been heard by officers, but more importantly, by you, their elected representatives. My neighbours don't have faith in democracy anymore. I still do. You've had objections from our elected town councillors on this proposal. Please heed them and the comments of my neighbours. I just want to tell you, Buckland Ripers is lovely. It's a fantastic little place. I don't wonder that people want to spend time there. But it's not when the campsite's open. It's not awful. It's not Beirut. But the natural environment of the area changes significantly. It stops being this fantastic, quiet rural agricultural setting where I chose to make my home. It used to be full of wildlife. And that's being corroded every time the campsite is being opened. I'm not seeing it regenerate. The campsite is already invasive on the environment for longer than it's officially open for because of all the building work and all the manicuring of our agricultural countryside. I want to believe that as councillors, you've come here to represent the people who elected you and to protect Dorset from exploitation and ruination. The Buckland Ripers residents are the people who are seeing the effects of this campsite and seeing the Dorset countryside ruined and the character of their environment destroyed. I'm asking you to listen to us and represent us. And I'll leave you with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that emotional statement. Mr. Perrott, next. You're deferring again, are you? Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Committee. Over the years, I've witnessed the adverse effect Buckland Campsite has had on our hamlet and its residents. Buckland Ripers has no shop, no pub. It's not on a bus route. The only access is Nottington Lane, which has 6 campsites along 1 mile of its length. Buckland Ripers has about 29 houses and some 65 residents. When the campsite owner is exercising his GPDO rights, the campsite has some 85 pitches, with, say, 3 campers on each. That triples the population of our village. I recognise that the applicant wishes to build an award-winning campsite, and of course the majority of campers are reasonable people. But residents have witnessed police attending, have heard and recorded domestic disputes in a campsite full of screaming children, and regularly we hear loud music as electrical hookups aren't just used for lighting. The 10 p.m. no-noise curfew is regularly ignored or policed in a very relaxed manner. We have seen campers using binoculars to look into our windows. I could go on. But the biggest nuisance, and the reoccurring nuisance, is that of noise and smell. A half of those 85 pitches having a barbecue means over 40 lots of smoke and cooking fumes migrating towards people's homes. That's before the mobile curry van or some other caterer arrives. Of course, it's not every evening that gardens can't be enjoyed, that windows have to be shut, washing taken in, and sleep becomes difficult. But it's once or twice a week. These are facts, and not some vexatious concocted idea to close the campsite as the applicant has suggested in the past. Case officers repeatedly say that camping is far enough away and won't affect residents. That's not the case. We endure most of it, but this year, as in previous years, there have been times when complaints have been made. We don't complain all the time. Clearly, we might have to, if the number of complaints actually counts and alters your decision. With each application that has grown, the campsite has grown, residents have objected. Once the whole village, every resident objected. Now, because of the way those objections are seemingly ignored, residents are apathetic. They see that the policies that are designed to protect them don't. We are now in a position where the applicant is again seeking to increase the times of opening. Committee, there has to be a balance. Any need for camping pitches in May and September can be satisfied by one of the local campsites open at that time of the year, including one owned by the applicant. The local economy won't suffer if you refuse this application. A balance has to be struck between the residents' amenity.
Sorry, you've had your 3 minutes, Mr. Perrott. Could you please leave it there? Thank you. And could I move to the next public speaker, which I think is Janine Beale, yes? Over to you, Janine. You have 3 minutes, and I'll give you a heads up when there's 30 seconds left. Thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to suggest you actually visit the site when it's open. I live next door to Holly Brow. Okay, according to your measurements, I'm far enough away not to hear anything. Oh, I certainly do. I really, really do. So again, I'd like to invite you all to come to my property in the height of the summer when my enjoyment is actually ruined by the campsite, okay? The application shows the site within the red boundary, but it actually extends across 3 areas in total. So campers are camping across 3 fields, okay? The shop and the games room sits directly behind our property, as does the football pitch and the games field. My property is so close to the campsite that I can actually hear the dryers in the toilet block, and I can hear conversations quite clearly of what people are saying. Okay? The rear of our property really does become out of bounds in the summer, very often during the evenings, when everybody's back on site, having their meals and lighting their barbecues. The noise does carry on beyond 10 p.m. at night. It's not policed satisfactorily. Our bedroom is at the back of the house. We can't sleep anywhere else. We haven't got another bedroom. So we shut our windows, we suffer. Okay. This is a rural area and it has no other commercial development. So opening the campsite for 5 months of the year is over-commercialisation of the area. And to agree to that extension of opening times simply adds to the unnecessary destruction of the character and amenity of this area and hamlet. And it's not only tents that use the campsite, camper vans do as well in the red area. Having read the case officer's report, I found a number of inaccuracies, which I think you've attempted to address this morning. When you permitted that extension to the times of opening in 2021, you stipulated the conditions saying that the camping would only be permitted between the 15th of May and the 31st of August each year. You did so in order to protect the visual amenity of the area. That condition was necessary to make that permission acceptable in planning terms. Nothing has changed. If amenity of the area still requires that protection, you must refuse this application. Similarly, last year, when granting retrospective permission for the use of the barn as a shop and reception, again, you stipulated a condition that would only be open between the same period of time. Again, I'd like to invite you to my property, particularly in July and August, when our summers are ruined. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Now we have the agent, which is Mr. Carpendale, please, if you'd like to speak. Thank you. 3 minutes and 30 seconds as usual.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. The Buckland campsite is in high demand from those wishing to holiday close to the coast in Dorset. This application will enable current demand to be met, including from the Ironman event, which provides a major economic boost to the county in September. The main issues raised by objectors relate to the adjacent SNCI and the impact of the extended season on the amenity of residents. As you've heard, the Dorset Wildlife Trust have visited the site and confirmed that the SNCI adjacent to it, over which there is a public right-of-way, is being suitably managed and is not being adversely affected. It should be noted the SNCI is entirely separate from the campsite, as Ms. Trevitt has explained. In terms of amenity, the only lighting installed or permitted on site is the low-level lighting within the toilet and shower block, which was approved by committee in 2021. The applicant has no objection to a condition being imposed to prevent any further lighting on the site. When making a booking, as you've seen, campers have to provide their agreement to the site's terms and conditions. These include the quiet time between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m, and that only off-ground fires, in other words barbecues, can be used. There is a warden on site 24 hours a day throughout the season to ensure compliance with all site conditions. In such circumstances, the amenity of residents, recognising that the nearest houses are a considerable distance from the site, as shown on the officer's presentation, can be properly safeguarded throughout the season. Crucially, your Environmental Protection Officer has raised no objection. We would like to thank the case officer for her comprehensive presentation. She has recommended approval subject to certain conditions being imposed, with which we are in complete agreement. This site is an important and well-managed tourist facility that contributes significantly to the Dorset economy. I would urge you to support the officer recommendation by granting permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carbondale. I now go back to Katrina for any points you wish to speak against or for, or no clarifications?
I think what it evidences is essentially, again, that high bar in terms of planning, in terms of policy and amenity, but obviously, we're not living with that site and experiencing what the local residents do. But I would just reflect again in terms of the evidence that is available to planning, in terms of that prevailing wind, in terms of distance, in terms of the environmental protection comments and records that have been submitted, that, for us, in terms of planning policy, there is no sustained reason to refuse the application on the basis of amenity.
Okay, thank you. Members, technical questions for the officer, please. Councillor O'Leary was first, followed by Councillor Bolton.
Thank you very much. Councillor Louis O'Leary, Littlewell Preston Ward. No one's had more experience in fighting holiday camps and campsite expansion. I suspect I have, but obviously we have to look at all these in separate measures. It's stated that there hasn't been a great deal of complaints to environmental health over the years. Has there been any comments from the ward members on this? Because what I've often found is people have emailed me with these sorts of complaints, and then you try and get them to go through the proper channels and they haven't, but a ward member can normally give a different perspective.
Every complaint is noted down on the environmental health system, even if by local ward members, etc., and there is no record of complaints having been made.
Sorry, what I was also asking is, has the ward members submitted any representation on this application? No, okay.
No, unfortunately not, Councillor O'Leary, and it is frustrating when we hear comments from members of the public about issues that haven't been reported or recorded. We can only go on the information we've been given, I'm afraid. It does make it difficult. Councillor Borden, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Belinda Borden, Lyme Regis and Charmouth. So I've got three different questions. One is, could you please explain GDPO and how that works? I've also curious why both the Environment Agency and environmental health teams do not consider this application to be in their remit if flood risk and the noise, smell and environmental disturbance that have been reported in this and previous planning applications have been raised by the local residents. And also on the question of the, what are the initials, SNCI, you said it's locally significant, but these are sites of nature conservation interest of national significance. And I'd just be interested in your comment on the fact that the areas of national importance cover 11.5% of Dorset, but unimproved and semi-improved grassland only accounts for 3.3%. Since the 1930s, the UK has lost over 97% of species-rich grasslands. So I'm just curious that you talk about it as being locally significant, and how you feel about the context of the fact that so much has been lost and we have very little left even in Dorset. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Excuse me. Katrina, please.
You may have to repeat those, but I'll try and run through them as best I can. So the GPDO is the General Permitted Development Order. So basically what they're granted permitted development rights for, which in this case is the 60 days camping in any one year. I think you were meant to say environmental protection, which used to be environmental health, but they're different from the national organisation, which is the Environment Agency. So environmental protection and can you just I've put a note in terms of it's not within their remit.
It's just a report. It actually says that both the Environment Agency and Environmental Protection Team, sorry, my mistake, their response was they did not consider this application to be within their remit. So my question is, given that we know that the local residents have over successive planning applications complained about the reality to them of noise, smell, environmental disturbance, and also there is mention, albeit in a small part of the area, of flood risk. I'm curious to know why those teams have come back to say they don't consider the application to be in their remit.
I think it's because there's various arms of environmental protection. And I think when the application was originally sent to environmental protection, they have the site licensing team. So I think the initial comment was you actually need to speak to the site licensing team in terms of them recording the noise complaints and how the site is being operated, which then kind of transpired in finding out about the 2022 comments and complaints that had actually been raised on the system but hadn't been kind of any further followed through in terms of statutory nuisance. But it's only on going back to environmental protection myself this week in terms of pursuing, in terms of the campfire issues and some of the environmental concerns that have been raised, that I asked for the generalised system, so all of environmental protection and their records going back for the last 6 years in terms of any complaints raised in terms of this site. So there's two, obviously, in August of this year, coinciding actually with the application being submitted, but that's irrelevant, on the same couple of days, but then preceding that was back to 2022. And in terms of the SNCI, it's a site for nature conservation interest, which is locally designated, which again, I think you're getting confused with the nationally kind of designated SSSI, which is different, which is sites of scientific special interest. So the SNCI is locally designated, but there's no legal duty to ensure that they're managed, maintained, upkept, kept free from people going over them, which is why obviously there's a public right of way which actually goes over this one, but they're just designated as being of local interest. So I hope that answers all the questions. Sorry if I've...
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Katrina. Is that okay, Councillor Borden?
Sorry, I was just going to say that's clarified the issues, possibly not the thing on environmental protection, but anyway, but that's fine, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Northam, please.
Thank you, Councillor Northam. I'm councillor for Upway and Broadway ward, which includes a stretch of Nottington Lane. So I am familiar with the traffic issues along Nottington Lane. It eventually enters Nottington, which is in my ward, which is in my town council ward, and then it reaches Dorchester Road, and the top end is in my ward for Dorset Council. So I'm familiar with that. I was going to clarify when I read the report and the concerns, I was concerned about the sites of special scientific interest, which seem to be mentioned, but that's not the case. The nearest SSSI is some way away. There is these two SNCIs, and as has been said, they're local interest, not national interest. That doesn't mean they're unimportant, but they're administered locally.
Sorry, Councillor Northam, is there a question for the officer?
Oh.
Would you like to hold that for debate then, and we'll move on to a technical question for the officer, but I admire your enthusiasm. Councillor O'Leary, I think you had your hand up, please.
Yes, Chairman, thank you for letting me come back. Can I just get clarification quickly before I then ask the question? Hiremore and the main Hiremore camp and Buckland camp are owned by the same company, yeah. Can you just clarify, if you wanted to access Hiremore from Buckland, the only way you can do so is via Nottington Lane? That's correct, isn't it? There isn't an internal road behind, if I remember from that. It is clearly accessed via Nottington Road. That's fine.
Yeah, sorry, I was just getting some advice from our legal here. Who was next?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think Councillor Neil Ising, Egerton Ward. My query, I think, related to the matter in which you were getting your legal advice on. So hopefully I'll be able to get an answer on this. But I was just wondering in relation to the GPDO, whether the 60 days permitted is added to any permission that would already be given. So whether when we're looking at the dates that we're looking at for this application, the 60 days would be added to that as well, or whether...
I'm sorry.
So essentially, no. But it can take place on land that does not form part of the application site, and obviously where there isn't express permission for the use as a campsite already. So, yeah.
Thanks, Katrina. I'll just ask Phil Crowther to come in here, please.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't had a chance to look at this in a lot of detail, but my advice to you is that the permission effectively overrides the 60 days. The 60 days is up to in any year. So if you grant permission for longer than that period, that supersedes the 60-day period, which can't then be added on. Like I say, I can't be definite on that, but I think that's my better view at the moment, which aligns with what Katrina said. In terms of other land, then it's a question of planning units. So the 60-day permitted development right applies to the same planning unit. So you can't, so we'd have to look at the extent of the planning unit within which this campsite sits, and there couldn't be another 60 days within that planning unit. If the owner then has another parcel of land which is detached somewhere else, then potentially that could have a campsite under the permitted development rights. Without looking at land ownership and of this farmer and having greater detail, I can't give you any more certainty than that. So yes, they may be able to have camping elsewhere under permitted development rights. How close to this site, I can't tell you off the top of my head. Chair.
Yes, thank you, Phil. Councillor O'Leary, you have a question?
Sorry, it's just on that. So the applicant has planning permission to have camping within the boundary for currently however many days. They're now looking for that to be extended, but surely that's only for the area within the planning area. Yeah, that's fine.
I'll just move to Katrina. I think she wants to come in again on the issue of the area. Thank you.
I think it's just to show the application plan again and the clearly defined red line area, and that the blue line area here, where I think they may exercise some of the permitted camping site, form a different planning unit in terms of this application. So it's this one here where my where the arrow is at the moment.
Thanks, Katrina. Could you just we'll just pause the meeting a minute. I think we're still trying to get some legal advice on this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So without knowing exactly what's going on the ground, difficult to give you precise advice, but assuming all the land within the blue land is being used for the is it a farm? Yeah. For the farming business, then within that blue line, they wouldn't be entitled to have another campsite operating under permitted development rights. If they've got land detached nearby, that might be a different issue, and they might then. But for the purposes of this application, it's the dates before you in the application that the campsite could operate under, and not an additional 60 days on top of that.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor O'Leary, followed by Councillor Borden, please.
This will be the last technical question I've got. And if they were to breach that would therefore be a breach of planning rules, and would therefore be a planning enforcement issue, wouldn't it, that would have to be dealt with?
Councillor Borden?
Yes, sorry, I didn't actually catch what Phil Crowther said just now about, are you saying that the current planning permission only applies to the area within the red, and that the GDPO does not allow them to use the area outlined in blue, I think it was, for purposes of the campsite?
Thank you, Chair. This is difficult to give advice because it's quite a complicated issue on the bounce. My view at the moment, the better view, not the definite view, but the better view is that because the land within the blue would be one planning unit, they couldn't then rely on permitted development rights to have another campsite for 60 days within the blue. I can't be definite about that, but that's my off the top of my head view. If they've got a parcel of land nearby, then yes, that might well benefit from the permitted development rights for up to 60 days.
Councillor O'Leary, did you have your hand up just now? Okay, Councillor Northern then, please.
For clarity, Katrina, please could you show again that location map? I'm having trouble telling red from blue, and could you take your cursor around the edge of the red area, please? Because that's what we're talking about. That's what this planning application is about. The rest is another matter.
Apologies. Essentially, you can see the bright red cursor dot, essentially, and I'll move around that red line site now. So to the northern side of that access. It also includes the access in, because you have to show access to the highway. But essentially, it's this red parcel of land here, and then the two blue lines abut Nottington Lane, essentially, here at the top. You've then got the SNCI, which is the triangle, and then you've got this, the rest of the SNCI, which is down here in the blue line, ownership here.
Thank you very much. Councillor Borden, followed by Councillor Christopher, please.
Thank you. Sorry to labour this point, but and I am struggling to hear as well, so I don't know if that's just me, but so would you define the use of camping as purely the siting of tents and not the other recreational uses, so the football and the I don't know, the other, would that not count as a part of the activity of the camping site, and therefore is not, it's allowable outside of the actual planning site, if that makes sense? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So the site is permitted for tented camping, and it was previously conditioned in terms of, and conditioned again in terms of being tented camping only, although I note the comments that have been raised today in terms of that. And essentially the playing of football and those various uses are ancillary to that, obviously for the time of when it's open, in terms of the open season and how it's been regulated by condition, or would be regulated by condition, to run from the 1st of May to the 30th of September. Yeah, that point that actually if it's in the blue line, then that would be a change of use because that hasn't been agreed as a campsite, essentially.
Get to.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Christopher, please.
Councillor Simon Christopher, Marshwood Vale. I think this has dragged on long enough. We've had uncertainty, I feel, on the part of the legal officer. We've got a report that's drafted by Darren Rogers. People have requested a site visit. I'm just disturbed that this has dragged on long enough and it should be deferred to another day.
Councillor Christopher, there's a technical question at the moment for the officers. We haven't moved to debate yet. I'll take that under debate, but...
Is it possible for this committee to approve on a temporary basis this application so that the impact of this proposal is assessed rather than a permanent change? Could I ask that of the legal officer?
You can, and he's about to answer.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, if the committee felt that such a condition met the tests for imposing a planning condition, then yes, absolutely. But there would be, you need to have some basis for not potentially needing to assess the basis of the temporary consent. So what does or does not need to be met by the end of the temporary period were an application to come back before you to make it a permanent consent. So just to remind you, members, the tests for a valid planning condition are that they're necessary, relevant to planning, relevant to the development to be permitted, enforceable, precise and reasonable in all other respects. I would add in relation to the earlier questions from members that it would also be possible if you consider that such condition would meet the test to add conditions that affect the blue line as well. So that could be to remove the permitted development rights for that area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. I think that's most helpful at the end there. I originally asked the question because I was concerned that the operating days that we were reviewing at the moment could have been extended by a further 60. I wasn't quite sure about the GDPO, but I am now. So I'm satisfied that, and the advice from Phil Crowther is also very useful if we wish to put a condition on there. But I think we've had plenty of technical questions. We'll now move to debate, please. Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, thank you. Like a lot of us that are in Weymouth, we know this area really well. My mum was married up here. I've known it for 25 years. And in that 25 years, there has been some positive improvements and some negatives. I'm going to offend some people. There's an awful looking solar farm up here now that has really blighted a large portion of the countryside. And there are already 6 camps operating on Nottington Lane, as discussed earlier. I think Highmore, in terms of the main camp, is a really, really smart camp, really good, and there's lots of positives. However, if you look at the Buckland site and you look at its closeness to some of the properties, including, if you look on the maps, the lady down there, although there is some foliage and a small lane leading to the camp separating them, I can easily see how disruption would be quite close to them in the height of the summer months. I do struggle to support this application. I just think it's a bit too much. I think this area is becoming a bit too busy for what is a small hamlet with what can it sometimes be quite a dangerous road due to the speeds in which you can travel on that road and the frequency of rat running and increased holiday usage. But on the other hand, I can't see a material planning consideration for refusal currently. What I would encourage residents to do is get in touch with their Dorset council members, and they say people are giving up reporting things. Speaking from a ward member who's had similar issues in their own ward, I really must stress it is vitally important to report to environmental health and to other agencies, because that builds up data that officers in planning rely on, and we rely on as well. It is, I mean, never ever stop. I mean, it is, don't do it for pernickety reasons, but obviously if there are valid issues, then please continue to report, and I think that must be stressed to the hilt.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Northern, please. I've got David. I've got you first, then Kate, and then Belinda.
Thank you. Yes, I can't see material reasons for objecting to this. I'd like to suggest that we do move to a vote. It's within our wider policy to encourage the growth of the tourist season, and this is an example of where that's happened. So similarly in Weymouth, we have extended the tourist season from Easter to September. Easter to end of August. It's now a longer period. This aligns with that. I think it will bring wider benefits to Dorset, and I'm satisfied that the regulations for these and other campsites are now being scrutinised, and they seem suitable for the activity that's taking place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Northern. Katrina, could you put the recommendation up on the screen, please, so that we're aware of exactly what people are proposing? Thank you. And I think we may need to explain Part B.
Okay, so recommendation A, because we're seeking a legal agreement to ensure that we receive the mitigation outlined that's required to offset the impact of the Cheslin Fleet European site. So therefore it's to delegate authority to the Service Manager for Development Management and Enforcement and the Area Manager for the Southern and Western team to grant planning permission subject to the completion of that legal agreement, and conditions relating to the use for tented camping, the times when tented camping will be able to operate and site operate inclusive in any 1 year, and that the tented camping shall be used for holiday purposes only. The development carried out in accordance with the FRA and the foul and surface water drainage details submitted, and also carried out in accordance with that biodiversity mitigation and enhancement plan from 2018. On the basis that that actually goes ahead or doesn't go ahead, you then have the backup position of recommendation B, which will come into effect should the legal agreement have not been completed by 6 months from the data committee, or such extended time has been agreed by the Service Manager for Development Management and Enforcement. And that refusal reason would basically be in the absence of the completed legal agreement, we wouldn't be able to evidence that the mitigation to the Cheslin Fleet and impact to the Cheslin Fleet has been satisfied.
Thank you, Katrina. Just checking with you, Councillor Northam, are you happy with that officer's recommendation? Is that your proposal?
Thank you. I am, and the important bit there is the bit about tented camping. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I now turn to Councillor Weller, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I hate doing this, but I'm not in favour of supporting the officer's recommendation, and I do think that there are reasons that we could come up with to support my opinion. There are a number of things. We live in a really, really lovely place, and we all know that, and we're all really appreciative of that. And of course, we should share it with people who live in less lovely places. But there has to be a balance. And, we talk about the 106 agreement and the mitigation on Cheslin Fleet European site, terrific, but that doesn't mitigate the impact on the residents of Buckland Ripers. And what they've said is very powerful. It is anecdotal, of course it is, but that's, residents' impressions are always anecdotal. We don't have evidence of that, but it would seem that despite the landowner operating another site very, very effectively. It's a site that is much bigger and has less impact on local residents. But anecdotally, it would seem that the noise impact is not policed as well as it should be. Anecdotally, the Dorset Wildlife Trust have not managed to get access and compliance to do the monitoring surveys that they would like to. Anecdotally, grass is being cut and damaging the natural habitat. Anecdotally, camper vans are there rather than just tents. This isn't anecdotal. This is against Chickerell neighbourhood plan, and that makes a nonsense of the neighbourhood plans that are being created at the moment. If we then ignore them totally, I don't believe we should do that. And Chickerell Town Council themselves, so not our DC councillors, but Chickerell Town Council have opposed this. All of those things I think should be taken into account. We always say we want to know the opinion of the town council. We shouldn't operate the cavalier fashion that I believe this landowner has. The impact on the traffic there is quite severe. It is a very quiet and very difficult road to negotiate. The idea of deferring it for a site visit, that would have to wait until next May, because if we did a site visit now, of course it would be nice and quiet, because, there are no tents there. So, that deferring is in my view, not an option. Higher demand, I'm sure there is, but that higher demand can be met elsewhere. It's not as though it's the only campsite. And the simple fact is, with the GDPO, they do have the option to extend should they need to. And I hope that, what I've said gives you sufficient grounds for a refusal. Looking at the chairman's face, it looks as though it doesn't. But I personally would not vote in favour of this extension. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. I do apologise for the facial expression. Councillor Borden, please, followed by Councillor Bell. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Belinda Borden, Lyme Regis and Chalmers. So I'd like to support actually what my colleague sitting in front here has just said. I'm concerned that the not in remit responses seems a little bit reductive and minimalist and not looking holistically at the bigger picture. Off-site mitigation for biodiversity impact, biodiversity and nutrient impacts is actually the last resort. It really shouldn't be seen as some sort of bonus. There's been recent examples in Lyme Regis and in the Harbours Committee. It was also reported in Weymouth about significant E. coli spikes at certain times of year, which our coastal engineer has surmised could be a result of increase in motorhomes and camping caravanning. Why take these extra risks when our environment is so precious? I'm concerned about the cumulative impact of the campsites that have been raised by Councillor O'Leary and others on the noise, smells, the traffic. And I'm kind of still slightly confused because I'm struggling to hear about the... It seems to me that there might be grounds for planning enforcement inquiries on this. So, yeah, I'm not in favour of agreeing this. I think that the residents have explained why they haven't made registered complaints, because they haven't felt listened to. I agree with Councillor O'Leary. I've actually done a little insert in my latest leaflet to encourage people to report concerns, because authorities need the data on which to make decisions. So I completely endorse that, but I do sympathise with people who feel that they have not been listened to, because often the process doesn't always work. But I don't think that means that we can ignore those very real concerns and the very real impact on the amenity of their homes.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Borden. I think we need to be careful on this one. We keep going back to the fact there's only, if it gets examined, there's only been 2 complaints in August, and we're going back to 2022 before there was other complaints. I'm going to bring Katrina in just a second, but I do feel that I was struggling to find something material in the things you were saying. You were doing a lot of generalistic statements which aren't necessarily pertinent to this particular planning application. So I think perhaps we need to get back on track to what's relevant. This is an extension of days on an existing campsite that already has permission to be there. So we do need to consider carefully the reasons why we're voting for or against. Katrina, please.
Yeah, thank you. I've just remembered what I needed to confirm to you before about environmental protection, but basically they said it wasn't within their remit, or they haven't actually pursued any action on this site, despite the complaints, because as part of the environmental protection protocol, they send out data sheets or diary sheets, essentially, to complainants so they can be completed and then submitted for them to then review whether there is any action required or any kind of noise or smell issues that they need to come out and actually monitor and review, which could then potentially lead to a statutory nuisance. But obviously none of that data has been submitted and collected or evidence to them. So, those complaints haven't pursued any further. And just to Councillor Weller, in terms of what was raised in terms of Dorset Wildlife Trust, they have been out on site and they have reviewed the SNCI, and there is a date arranged for that monitoring to be undertaken. So in terms of that 2018 biodiversity plan, what has been asked of them to make sure that monitoring is undertaken is now in the pipeline and is going to go ahead. So essentially they've complied with that element. And just in terms of that grass cut natural habitat as well. And I think it's just going back to that net comment about it being low distinctiveness. In terms of biodiversity habitat, the grassland is low distinctiveness in their view, which is why nothing further has been, persevered in terms of any other types of mitigation or habitat creation as part of this application. So I just wanted to confirm those points.
Thank you, Katrina. Could I go to Councillor Bell now, please, followed by Councillor Christopher?
Thank you. Councillor Matt Bell, Radipole Ward. I know this part of the area quite well. I cycle up Nottington Lane quite a lot for enjoyment in the summer months. It undoubtedly adds to the weight of traffic on the road. I'm quite surprised there's not further comment on that, especially with some quite tight spaces. Certainly feels tight when I'm on my bike and I'm going past some of these vehicles. However, as a planning committee, we have to go with what's in front of us. And the anecdotes I can provide don't add to the legal weight to go against the officer's recommendation. So whilst I understand, I can interpret and understand the local residents' issues and objections, it's just to reiterate, we need these to be reported through. I know there have been other campsite developments in the Weymouth area where there's been studies on smell and noise, and I was going to come in with some further points on that, but that's just been explained very well by the officer that those actions would follow complaints that are logged. I think at the moment, whilst I understand the issues raised by the residents, we have to go off what's in front of us, the evidence we have, and my feeling is we don't have enough to go against the officer recommendation. So for that reason, I would support the officer recommendation.
Can I just check, is that a second to the proposal?
I'm happy to second, yeah.
Thank you. So we now have a proposal and a seconder on the table. I will now go to Councillor Christopher, please.
Chair, you have a proposal, so I think you should deal with that.
If you have no wish to add to the debate, Councillor Christopher, then I will move to that. If there's nobody else that wishes to speak on it.
So I would make the fact that the residents have been, in my opinion, badly served by their local ward members. And secondly, Councillor Borden did mention traffic problems, and there is no way in which we can refuse this because we are not traffic experts, as Councillor Bell adhered to.
Thank you, Councillor Christopher. Anne Collins, please.
Sorry, can I just clarify? You said that was a seconder. Who proposed approval? Thank you.
I think I would have got kicked if I had missed that one, Officer Collins. Councillor Borden. On this, I will be asking for testing this by vote after this comment, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So I just wanted to add some wider context. So since the 1930s, the UK has lost over 97% of its species-rich grasslands. Dorset has experienced 80% loss of species-rich grasslands since the 19th century, and the remaining grasslands are small and fragmented, reducing ecological resilience and wildlife viability. We do have a local climate and nature strategy, and I do think that this context is relevant in this case. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have a proposal and a seconder. I'm going to test this by asking for a vote. All those in favour of the proposal by Councillor Northam, please raise your hands. That's 5-4 against. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against. No abstentions. No abstentions. It is a tie, and unfortunately that comes down to the chairman's vote again. This is not the first time I've been in this position. I've heard a lot of comments today. I have every sympathy. However, my role as chairman is to vote on this, on the details that are in front of us. And I'm afraid I'm going to use my casting vote to approve the officer's recommendation. Therefore, that one has been passed. Thank you all for the debate on that. That was very, very deep and meaningful, and I just hope people are happy that we've done our best on that one. I'll now move to item 6 on the agenda, which is P/LBC/2025/03873, King George III statue, the Esplanade, Weymouth, DT48DE. Presentation by Nicola Yates. There are no public speakers on this one. Sorry. Yes, please. Sorry, I thought it was said presented by Nicola. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this application is regarding the King George III statue, at Esplanade, Weymouth, and the application is to replace the sceptre to the statue. This listed building consent application has been brought to Planning Committee as the structure to which the application relates is owned by Dorset Council. The application site is the King George III statue, highlighted in red on the site location plans. The statue is Grade 1 listed and is located within the Weymouth Town Centre Conservation Area. The statue sits in a prominent position at the junction of the Esplanade, Western Road and St Thomas Street. The statue, to commemorate the 50th year of the reign of King George III, was erected in 1809-1810. Made mostly of coed stone with other minor mixed materials and set on a tall Portland stone pedestal, The statue is flanked by a gold lion and a white unicorn. The significance of this Grade 1 listed structure is derived from its historical and communal value. And the statue is an iconic landmark along Weymouth seafront and makes a positive contribution to the conservation area. The statue was first listed in 1953 with the listing description mentioning the sceptre held in the right hand. However, the statue is now missing the sceptre, believed to have been removed in the 1970s. Yes, as you can see from the photos, the statue is considered a significant element of the overall experience of Weymouth. And the statue sits tall, facing north along the esplanade in a very prominent position on a large island at the junction of several roads, and therefore is clearly visible. The proposal seeks to replace the missing sceptre to the statue, as I said, believed to have been removed in the 1970s, but the exact reason for the removal is unknown. The proposed materials and finishes for the new sceptre would be hardwood and coated in gold leaf. The supporting documentation states that the new sceptre would be as exact a replica as can be produced by a specialist conservation contractor. The proposed works would see a sceptre created matching that shown in this photograph, dated 1964. The fixings of the new sceptre would be similar to the original with support from the hand and leg. However, the fixings are stated to be modern materials. However, no specific plans or details have been provided regarding the design, size and fixing, which was highlighted in Historic England's comments. So the key points, it is considered that the proposal would enhance the statue, seeing the sceptre reinstated, bringing the statue back to the original condition. The proposal is considered to make a positive contribution and would not cause harm to the listed structure, nor detrimentally alter the appearance of this heritage asset. Furthermore, the proposal would not impact the setting of the neighbouring listed buildings, nor the character and appearance of the conservation area. It is considered that the principle of the replacement sceptre is acceptable and that the design, size and fixing details could be agreed by way of a condition. So it's concluded the proposal would enhance the special architectural and historic interest of the heritage asset and therefore would not result in harm to the significance of the listed structure. And the proposal would not result in harm to the neighbouring listed building nor the distinctiveness of Weymouth Town Centre conservation area. And in reaching this conclusion, the proposal has been assessed with regard to the relevant policies. Therefore, recommend for approval. Looking to grant approval, subject to the conditions being commenced within 3 years, in accordance with the approved plans, and agreement, a submission and approval of the design, size and fixings of the replacement sceptre. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Nicola. Short and sweet. So technical questions, I think, from members, if there are any, please. Councillor Shortell.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. A couple of questions. The sceptre, will that be supported on its bottom end to prevent it slipping through the hand? That would possibly have been the cause in the first place.
It'll be supported at the hand and the knee, but the actual fixings are what I was proposing to condition so that that could be agreed to exactly how that would be. But that's how it was originally attached.
Thank you, Councillor Shortell. Any other technical questions for the officer, please? Then in that case, I'm quite happy to move to debate. I've got Councillor Bell, Councillor O'Leary and Councillor Weller. In that order, please.
Looks like Team Weymouth prompted into action here. Sorry, I should have said Councillor Bell, Radipole Ward. Yes, let's move forward with this. It's on our seafront. It's in a prime location. It improves it. It's met with, satisfied what the officers are looking for. So I'd like to propose that we move to the vote.
Yes, thank you. I'll take that proposal. Councillor O'Leary, please.
Yes, as a most loyal subject and staunch monarchist, I'm very happy to second that one. God bless, God save the king.
Thank you, Councillor Leary. So we have a proposal and a seconder. I will now move to Councillor Weller to see if she wishes to speak or whether she was trying to second one.
That was exactly what I was going to say, so that's fine.
So thank you, members. Anybody else wishing to speak on this one? If not, then we're voting on approving this application as per the officer's recommendation. All those in favour, raise your hands. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We will now move to item 8 on the agenda, which is P/FUL/2025/01060, which is Para Academy Kite Surfing Centre, Victoria Square, Portland. Just bear with me. Actually, I'm quite happy if members do want a 5-minute break, we'll take a 5-minute comfort break now. If it's 7 minutes, don't worry, we'll still be here. Right, all the councillors have returned. Councillor Simon Christopher has left for the day, so he won't be taking part in the proceedings from now on. We now move to P/FUL/2025/01060, Para Academy Kite Surfing Centre, Victoria Square, Portland. It will be presented by Robert Parr, and we do have one speaker, which is the applicant, Craig Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the application's brought to committee for determination as Dorset Council owns part of the land subject to at the application site. The proposal is to retain the existing building with alterations to windows and doors for mixed use as a drinking establishment with food provision and kite surfing school/shop. Apologies. So the site's located at the northwest end of Portland and the northwest end of the Masonic car park. And to the north of the application site is the Portland skate park. The existing building is a single-storey structure with timber-clad walls and corrugated roof. And the building has a history of use as a water sports centre. So for context, we've got some photos here looking north towards the site from the car park with this top left image taken before the development and then the bottom right taken after. Here we've got a view of the site from the skate park side. And again, top left, we've got the site before development, and then bottom right, we've got post-development. So the plan view here shows the kite surf shop on the left, and with associated facilities, so staff room, etc. And then in the centre is the new bar drinking establishment with the route out to the skate park to the top there. Here we have the proposed south elevation. Obviously existing doors. And then we have the proposed north elevation with the new double doors which lead out onto the skate park on the outside of the building. And then finally, we have the west and east elevations as submitted. The application was submitted with a 3D illustration of the drinking establishment here on the right. And then here is a screenshot from Google just showing the completed development now in use. So as set out in my report, the proposal is considered acceptable in all respects with the exception of the flood risk. So here we can see the flood risk map of the area, which shows the site is well within flood zone 3, and access and egress is high risk of surface water flooding along the road there. The EA, the Environment Agency, are objecting to the proposal as they consider the flood risk assessment is not acceptable, and the addition of a drinking establishment increases the risk from the historic less vulnerable use as a water sports centre to more vulnerable use with the addition of the drinking establishment. The EA have set out that the site is at risk of a 1 in 200 year risk of extreme wave overtopping, and there's a hazard rating of danger for some on site and danger for all in the surrounding areas and surrounding access. As the proposal includes the retention of the building, the National Planning Policy Framework sequential test is triggered in regards to flood risk. The application wasn't submitted with a sequential test, so a search of available premises within a mile of the site was carried out by officers, and these two properties were found. However, they're both also within flood zone 3. The NPPF sets out that if development cannot be located in areas within a lower flood risk of flooding, the exception test is triggered and has to be applied. The exception test has 2 criteria, both of which must be passed. First one is wider sustainability benefits to the community. Do they outweigh the flood risk? And then secondly is the development, or would the development be safe for its lifetime? Now, although there are community benefits associated with the development, these are considered to be slight and ultimately is not considered to outweigh the flood risk. The existing flood risk is high and expected to increase with climate change. The proposed use as a drinking establishment would increase the flood risk at the site. So as such, the proposal is not considered safe for its lifetime. And in conclusion, therefore, the application has been recommended for refusal as it's failed to demonstrate safe access and egress routes in the event of a flood, and the proposal fails the flood risk exemption test. Thank you, Chairman. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much for that, Robert. We now move to the public speakers. So, Craig, you have 3 minutes, and I'll give you the heads up after 2 minutes 30. Thanks.
Thank you. So firstly, I just want to address a couple of the points that were on there in terms of bringing more to the community, in terms of the sport side of the business and the building. I believe we do. We run specific under 18 kids, bringing kids into sport, being more active. Also, actually, this weekend coming, we're bringing the British National Kitesurfing Championship to Portland Harbour. We've got over 100 competitors from all over the world staying in Portland, using shops, different areas, so bringing revenue to the area. So I believe that we do, as a business, bring a lot to the area as well. In terms of the flooding, where anywhere in that area is going to be vulnerable for flooding. Me as a kite surfer, 25 years, probably looks at a weather forecast more than anybody in the world. So with any event of weather that's going to overtop Chesil Beach and risk my building of flooding, I'm going to know about it. And I do not want to put my staff, my family, my customers at risk of that flooding. So the simple answer to that, which is set out in our risk assessment and our procedures, is to make sure we're closing the business in plenty of time if that event was to happen. Other factors to consider are Dorset Council provide a skate park for young children, which is right behind our building. They granted the permission for that development. That is actually lower than our building. Our building is actually raised 500 millimetres above ground level. For that area to flood, Chesil would need to be completely wiped out. Places like the Masonic Lodge, the parts of the town that are lower than us, where the water would run off to first and have to back up to our car park to be able to flood our building, the amount of water that would be needed to do that would be astronomical. And then that goes without saying, the culvert that runs under Beach Road that takes the water away, takes it back into the harbour. There is sea defences further up the beach towards other premises like the Cove and things like that. So yeah, I do believe we bring something good to the area. We've had a great year so far. Everyone speaks really highly of the establishment. We're very different to any other establishment in Portland. With the addition of the kite surfing, it really helps. And obviously before all this, we'd also have sat down with Portland Town Council, who are all really happy with what we were proposing. So thanks again for your time.
Thank you very much for that. Robert, is there anything you'd like to speak back on?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, in that case, members, Councillor O'Leary, I think you're first.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just slightly confused about a statement the officer said. If it becoming a drinking establishment increases the flood risk, can I ask how much are they drinking? And I'm offering to help in any way reduce such risk, but I find this really confusing on how that works.
I'm not sure it's the quantity of alcohol, or it may be relevant actually. I think it's the fact that people are drinking there increases the risk to those people, but I'll let Robert answer it.
So, yeah, the National Planning Policy sets out different flood risk vulnerability classifications in Appendix 3. And, you know, that they obviously decide it's not something that we just pluck out the air. And that they basically concluded that a drinking establishment elevates the risk beyond, say, something which is for informal leisure. So, for example, I think from memory, play parks, which might include, you know, skate parks, would be at a lower risk. In fact, yeah, I'm pretty sure, you know, skate play areas are allowed in flood zones. So yeah, it's where you've got people sort of congregating, going into buildings, etc. But yeah, the different classifications are set out quite clearly in policy.
Councillor O'Leary, do you want to come back on that, or are you happy with that explanation? Okay. I've got Councillor Northern followed by Councillor Weller, please.
I'm going to make this a technical question. I'd like to see the flood risk map in more detail, because what you showed just had a spot at the end of the red bit. And I think it's quite important what's been said about it being on slightly higher ground. The car park itself is lower. And I think there are a number of other cafes with bars. There's the drive-through cafe as well, that are also within these flood risk areas. So I'm confused as to why this particular application is attracting this attention. And I think if we look at the map, we can also look at the access and egress.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Northern. Could you pop the map back up, please, Rob? Thanks.
So I've got our mapping system up, and you can see flood zone 3 is highlighted in blue, and I can add in there the surface water flood risk, and we need to apply the allowance for climate change. There's flood zone 3. If you'd like, I can zoom out. Happy to be directed, Chair, on which bits you'd like to see.
Yes, you certainly may, Councillor Northern.
So there's a very narrow strip of land next to the flood zone and the sea, which isn't in the flood zone. It's slightly raised for that one. And if you go right at the top of the beach, keep going right up, there's another, there you are, that's definitely in the flood zone. The cafe bar that's there. So there's precedent is what I'm trying to identify. Thank you.
Yes, I think we need to be careful that the current rules were not enforced at the time when the previous buildings were constructed. The question is, would they have been allowed under the current legislation. So, yes. Councillor Weller, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you very much. It is a matter of access and egress, as Councillor Northern states. And we're looking at this. We're not looking at those existing buildings because, of course, the Masonic Lodge is there and the ship and everything else, and they're drinking establishments. But they've been there a long time. My technical question, because I have other points, but my technical question is, are we prohibited from approving something that the Environment Agency tells us we should not? Are we allowed to ignore them, basically?
Thank you. I'll ask Anne Collins to come in, please.
Yes, Chair. I mean, obviously, the Environment Agency is statutory consultee, and what they say shouldn't be taken lightly. They are obviously flood risk experts. But in this case, given the nature of the application and to do with its scale, if members had reasons to approve it, they could do so. Certain applications then have to be directed to the Secretary of State to see if the Secretary of State wanted to call it in, but this wouldn't be one of those applications.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask Phil Crowther to come in, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to be very clear and to add what Mrs. Collins said, you're not entitled to ignore the advice of the Environment and the Environment Agency. That would lead any decision susceptible to judicial review. You are able, though, as Mrs. Collins said, to decide that there are other factors which outweigh the concerns of the Environment Agency. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Borden, please.
Thank you, Chair. Belinda Borden, I'm Regis and Charmouth. So are there situations, or could there be conditions on the access and egress question? Because obviously that was part of your consideration about the flood risk. Is there something more we could do to make or to reduce the flood risk?
Yeah, Anne, would you like to come in on that one? I don't think there is, but I'll leave you to answer that.
Oh, sorry.
Chair, there could be a condition will be requiring the approval of flood evacuation strategy, which I think we already have, flood warning and evacuation strategy, but that doesn't actually reduce the flood risk or overcome the issue of a flood event happening and whether there is actually safe access and egress. So a bit like we've discussed at other committees recently, there's kind of a couple of separate matters here. There's the sequential test and the exception test, which the site fails the exception test for the reasons that Rob's already explained. But notwithstanding that kind of more theoretical policy test, there's a practical issue of kind of real world harm in terms of what is the actual risk to life potentially in terms of achieving safe access and egress from the site. And obviously the vulnerability is increased by the nature of the use in terms of that drinking establishment. Where was I going with this? What was the original question? Conditions. So using a condition wouldn't actually reduce the chance of a flood risk or prevent the site from being flooded. You could obviously condition that a strategy is in place explaining how the building would be evacuated and where people would go. But the issue is that the land outside the site and surrounding roads are present danger to most or danger to all in the event of a flood, and therefore safe access and safe evacuation would be hard to perform if a flood event occurred.
Thank you. You happy with that, Councillor Borden?
So yes, sorry, no, I didn't mean to imply that we could reduce the flood risk. I was talking about the evacuation plan and the practicalities of the access and egress, but you've explained about the surrounding roads would also be flooded. But yes, thank you. I didn't express the question very well.
Thank you. Councillor Northern, please, and then Councillor Weller.
Thank you. Councillor Northern, Upway and Broadway. The flood risk there is a flood risk, and I believe the principal flood risk is wave overtopping, and there are weather forecasts, and the weather forecasts provide prediction of when such events will take place. And I think I'd like to ask whether we can set a condition around opening times such that there shouldn't be open during periods of high risk, and we can define that. These events that happen aren't instantaneous. I was cut off on the island on Valentine's dance up on Portland Heights, couldn't get back until 11 o'clock the next morning. But there'd been a warning, I should have taken notice of it. I chose to go to the event and then was cut off. So isolating it in time allows people to access and egress it. It is an issue, but I think it can be contained by that. Most of the time, there will be no issue whatsoever. This isn't a tidal level rising issue. This is a wave overtopping issue, and they are predictable with a reasonable degree of certainty. Thank you. So I'm asking, can we make a condition that it can only open in those when there are no forecasts, adverse forecasts? Thank you.
Yeah, just bear with me, Councillor Northam. I'm just checking that minute.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, Mrs. Collins may want to add to what I'm going to say. I think one of the difficulties with such a condition would be its enforceability and how able the council was to enforce that condition in circumstances where it may be, well, one of the issues might be it may be too dangerous for an enforcement officer to check. So it may be physically impossible for an enforcement officer to safely check in severe weather conditions. But I think the main one would be enforceability in that scenario. Like I say, there may be other reasons.
Chair, I used to windsurf, and when you're in these sort of activities, you are regularly looking at the weather, and these guys know far more about it than I do, and it's their business. Their principal business is around the Para Academy. I'm really supportive of, sorry, I'm going into debate. I think that there isn't a need for an officer to supervise this. It would be a condition on the operator, and the operator has to oblige to that condition. We would have to have a degree of trust that he will observe the condition.
We'll come back on that, but we will leave that for the debate if that's okay. We've still got some technical questions to get through. Yeah, you can come back in, Phil.
Thanks, Chair. So one of the tests for a lawful condition is that it's enforceable. That doesn't mean that you leave it to the operator's trust that they will comply with those conditions. That means it is possible and practicable for the planning authority to monitor that condition and take enforcement action if necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Phil. Councillor Weller, please.
I was just saying that we're straying into debate, and I'd quite like us to go to debate now and decide what we'd like to do.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm still worried that there may be one or two technical questions, but if they're not, if everybody's happy, we can move to debate then. Thank you. And Councillor Weller will be first, followed by Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you very much. The applicant knows his business terribly well. Those of us who know the area know that there are flood warnings on that road. They come up automatically, and there are sirens on that road. We also know that other than for, an act of God, i.e. a tsunami, and we're not in a tsunami, I bow to Councillor Bell on this, but we're not in a tsunami range, are we? Most people, and I can see this site from my bedroom window, I know whether it's a good idea to drive along the beach road or not, and I don't if it looks a bit wavy. People know every house on that area is liable to flooding, and they know, and they batten down their hatches. We could reasonably expect that this business owner will not open if it's unsafe for people to be out on the water If it's unsafe for them to be there, it's his business, it's his livelihood, and it's his investment. Yes, of course, conditions should be placed. And we've had huge incidents in that area, and there are emergency officers on site then evacuating people, moving them up to church halls and so on. All those emergency procedures are in place for everyone who lives there. For us to say that there's an increased risk because of a business opportunity, I think is, it smacks of a nanny state, to be perfectly honest. We have to make sure that the applicant, and have a condition whereby the applicant watches those flood warnings, watches everything else, takes note of the siren, the emergency warnings on the beach road and everything else. But other than that, I don't think that we're adding to the risks of those people using that area. And I'm amazed that we should suppose that we are. I'd like to see us approve it.
Councillor O'Leary. Thank you, Councillor Weller. And then Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you. I think me and Councillor Northam are having flashbacks to the Brenda Denture debate, which is similar and based on the same guidance, as it were. We have two individuals here trying to improve a business in what is the most deprived area, apart from Melcombe Reach, where Brenda Dench House was, in the county. And we are then going to refuse their request to improve their business based on a 1 in 200 chance, a 200-year chance of a flood. I think people have to take sometimes risk into their own hands. I think they have to accept that there are risks in doing things. There is a risk living in Underhill of flooding. People are aware of that, as described by Councillor Weller. What this does, once again, just as Brenda Dench House does, it sets a precedence for almost no future or any development whatsoever in these areas, and could really adversely impact them. I think that the potential damage economically outweighs the potential flood risk, in my opinion, and I cannot support refusal.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Matt Bell, please.
Councillor Matt Bell, Radipole Ward. Very similar to comments already made. I view this as being quite substantially different to the other application from a few weeks ago. This isn't a residential property. We're not putting high density housing into a flood risk area. We're talking about a building that is already used by similar numbers as it would be in future with this. The egress route isn't 600 metres as it was with another one recently. This is roughly 200 metres to Victoria Gardens. You'd be up enough of a slope there to get out of the way. We've got the existing flood warning systems. I grew up in Wyke. I remember the island being shut off numerous times. I know that the locals are on this and they are aware, and anyone delivering any outdoor education, as I'm on the fringe of in my role as a teacher, I know risk assessment is in your very heart and soul, and it's part of your everyday work. I view this as very, very different to the Brenda Dench application. I feel very supportive of this business moving forward with this improvement and retaining it. I realise that puts us in a slightly sticky situation in terms of how we word it to potentially go against the officer's recommendation, but I'm minded that the flood risk here is far more manageable. It isn't high density, long-term residential use. It is substantially different enough that I'm satisfied that a way forward can be found to allow this improvement to the facilities to proceed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bell. I am mindful that the exception test was not passed. Now, we do have a framework that we have to work within as on the planning committee. That said, if the committee feel that the community benefit outweighs the risk, I'm struggling personally with the community benefit because there are similar establishments nearby. So I'll just put that out there for you. Councillor, who are we on to now? Councillor Weller, have you spoken? You have, haven't you? Councillor O'Leary? Right. Matt Bell spoken. Belinda Borden, please.
Thank you. Sorry. Belinda Borden, Lamb Regis and Charmouth. So, yeah, I think the community benefit of a business like this is it's always very hard to quantify, but if you're looking after young people and giving them the opportunity to enjoy a very, healthy sport, and particularly from my previous experience looking after particularly young boys with who were in danger of permanent exclusion, one of the routes that we found as a school was working with the Sailing Academy and the water sports activities that were going on there, and it really changed lives. It really gave these young boys mainly, but young people, something that they could really thrive in, and they became sports leaders, and it changed their lives. It's always very difficult to quantify this kind of thing, whereas, obviously the Environment Agency flood risk, one in 200 years coming down to 1 in 30 years with climate change is easier to quantify. But it just strikes me as that this is, as others have said, it's a very laudable. No, that's not. That sounds too worthy. But it's a local business seeking to expand and offer more facilities. It very near to the skate park as well, and we all know that the benefits of skateboarding. I agree with you. The difficulty about the exception test. However, I do think that the benefits of the sports, the benefits of enabling young people to learn skills in a actually very environmentally sustainable sport as well. It's not like motorsport, or it's using our facilities and the benefits of our beautiful area. I think it's something that we should take account of, those additional community benefits and support.
Yeah, can I just clarify something here? We're not actually debating whether this business carries on as a business. This business is already working. What we're actually debating is whether the addition of a bar, turn it into a drinking establishment, has increased the risk, and in the Environment Agency's eyes it has, and it also fails a sequential test. So much as I understand, it's very laudable, as you say, the business itself, that's not in discussion, the business. That will carry on regardless. What we're debating here is whether we're happy with it to stand with a drinking establishment inside and the increased risk that brings according to the Environment Agency. And as I said before, as a committee, we do have to follow the rules of the National Planning Policy Framework, etc. So please bear that in mind and focus on what we're actually debating rather than the whole business per se. Just bear with me. Right, so a clarification. Apparently the business is not authorised either. So we are talking about the whole lot. No, you don't ignore it. You can include it as the fact that what the risk has increased. So if the bar wasn't in there, the risk would be lower, I think, is a salient point. So I'll just go to Councillor Roper, who wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Pete Roper, Portland Ward.
Move the mic.
Sorry. Yeah, start again. Yeah, Councillor Pete Roper, Portland Ward. And just picking up on this community benefit element. Sorry about that, but as you can see, it's the establishment is right next to the sort of Portland skate park. The age range of young people who use that facility, it's from 4 all the way up to 21 plus, obviously. What this bar does is that it enables parents to take their young children down to the skate park and and actually sort of sit in the bar for have a coffee. You know, it's not it's not mandatory. You have to have an alcoholic drink, so that they can watch over their children. Make sure that they're safe. And it has been proven very very popular. So I think that that's one element of the community benefit which I think should be sort of taken into account. And also, we've been talking about the flood risk and whether about this distinction between residential properties and commercial properties. And to be honest, if we would be looking at this, if it's residential, we would go back to a previous application and say that it's not the risk is too great. The thing is, this is a commercial property. It's on Portland. It's run by Portland people. Everyone on Portland basically looks to the skies every time there's a storm sort of brewing, so they'd be aware of it. So that they're on their emergency plan, I believe, the establishment would be shut down well before a storm actually hit Portland. So I don't think that the risk is as great as if it was a residential property there.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Roper. Councillor O'Leary, I've got you down to speak again.
I'm actually going to have a punt at of a proposal. I would like to recommend approval of the application, as we feel the economic and community benefit from this business outweighs the potential, and I want to really stress that word, flood risk, pending correct risk assessment and flood evacuation plans are in place.
Thank you for that, Councillor O'Leary. I will now check that with Anne Collins and Phil Crowther. Anne, would you like to speak on that? Is it robust enough to stand scrutiny?
Well, Chair, it is a reason in terms of the economic and community benefits outweighing the potential flood risk. It's still a bit hard to actually ascertain how members consider it actually to be safe, the second part of the kind of the exceptions test about it being safe in the event of a flood. We can condition the flood evacuation plan, but obviously, as we've heard, it does rely on the owner actually, or the operator, whoever's there at the time, actually adhering to it. There's an element of risk around it. Yeah, it's probably as much as I can say, Chair.
Yeah, Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, can I just say as well, this is a bit different than a normal application in terms of Dorset Council officers are recommending refusal on this based on advice from the Environment Agency. So if we were to grant approval for this, I find it incredibly unlikely that anybody is going to appeal this decision or test this decision. I know I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this. The council solicitor said about a potential JR. I have no idea who's going to bring a JR on this, and frankly, if they did, they have too much time on their hands. So I just feel that if we did approve this, I don't see who is going to upset in regards to actual challenge. I've made this recommendation. I feel that the area is safe, pending certain things such as risk assessments and flood evacuation plans are in place, and the fact that frankly, if this advice was 20 years ago, we wouldn't have the say in the academy or anything down there, and it really worries me once again that we're going to put a very deprived area worse off as a result of this.
Yes, thank you, Councillor O'Leary. We do have something to consider, so unless it's something new, could you refrain from joining in, members, unless you wish to add something to the statement there? Councillor Bell.
I was just going to say I'm happy to second.
We need to adjourn to make sure we can come up with a proposal that is robust enough for the members to consider. Councillor Borden, you had your hand up, and then Councillor Weller.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to second the proposal as well.
Yeah, we haven't got a proposal just yet. Yeah. Phil Crowther wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back on one of the comments that Councillor O'Leary made. You should be making your decisions in a lawful way. I'm not saying that this decision would be unlawful, but you need to give reasons following Mrs. Collins' advice for the proposal that you're going to make. You shouldn't be considering whether it's the should be making a lawful decision, and you should not be taking into account whether somebody is likely or unlikely to issue a judicial review. We've had a number of judicial reviews issued against the council in not too distant past where we might not have expected them to come. So that's just to say that's not a consideration you should take into account. Decisions should be lawful regardless of who may or may not challenge.
Yes, we need to get through to something concrete. So the more this carries on, the more confusing it's getting. Yes, Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, the reason I mentioned JR is because Mr. Crowther mentioned JR, so it was in response to that. I didn't bring that up. He mentioned a JR. I'm saying he's telling me not to base the decision based on the likelihood of a JR. I only raised it because it was raised as a reason not to approve the application.
Thank you. Unless there's anything burning that needs to be said, we need to adjourn for a discussion. Councillor Weller.
Thank you. Just very quickly, the applicant mentioned the possibility of national championships, even international championships, with the training and the membership that he has. We have to remember that this area, with the National Sailing Academy, has become an area of sailing, of water sport excellence. That has made an enormous difference to the economy of this area, and the economy of the area is one of the priorities of this council and does carry weight when we make decisions on things, I believe. Thank you.
Councillor Northern, last comment, please.
I was going to ask if, when we make the words, it includes the fact that Fortune's Well is, as Councillor O'Leary pointed out, the second most deprived area in Dorset. It's certainly in the bottom, one of the 11 areas that are in the bottom 20%. Thank you.
Members, I think we're going to have to adjourn for 15 minutes to discuss this. So if you could bear with me. It's 12:30, so 12:45 reconvene, and at 1 o'clock I'm leaving just to cheer your day up. Thank you. Welcome back, members. Thank you for your patience. Anne, could I go to you, please, to see what you've managed to come up with on this one? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So listening to what Councillor O'Leary said, he's basically saying that the economic and community benefits outweigh the potential flood risks subject to conditions, and one of those being the requirement for a flood evacuation plan to be in place. That would be a condition, and the signing off of the agreement of that flood evacuation plan would normally be a delegated decision by officers post-determination of a planning application. And at present, I do have to advise members that if we were to be given a flood evacuation plan, I can't see at this present time how that would make it acceptable in terms of demonstrating safe access and egress in the event of a flood as part of that flood evacuation plan. So that's my advice to members at this point in time.
Thank you, Chair. So just to, so the consequence of that would be you would be granting planning permission subject to a condition for a scheme. The advice from office for the flood evacuation scheme and the emergency plan. Advice from officers is that at the current time on the information that we've got, that you couldn't see that plan being approved. So two consequences flow from that. One is that you shouldn't, as a matter of law, be approving something knowing that a condition down the line will stop that from happening. So you'd effectively know that there was an in-principle issue with that. You couldn't grant planning permission knowing there was an in-principle issue in place. However, it might be, as members, that you believe that there is a solution that we are not yet, that officers are not yet aware of, which would provide an answer and mean that an acceptable plan could be put forward. On that basis, you could go ahead, and it may be one that you want to consider rather than the usual course of events, which would be officers approving conditions under delegated powers. It may be that you would wish to consider that application yourself when it came in, and that would be a decision that you're entitled to make. Thank you, Chair. So, in summary, I think if you do not think that a safe flood risk plan could be approved, and the officer advises on the information that you've got at the moment, that couldn't be done, you shouldn't be approving the application. However, if you think that there is a potential out there, because of your, you may have local knowledge of the site that perhaps the officers don't have, and that it is possible that an emergency plan and escape route could be approved, then you can grant planning permission subject to that coming back. It wouldn't be the normal course, so you wouldn't be reconsidering the principle of the application after today, but an option would be for you to consider the discharge of that condition after that application. That would normally be done by officers, but you have the right to say, no, on this occasion we would want to do that ourselves. Thank you, Chair.
Right, I think I'm probably none the wiser on that one. Councillor O'Leary.
A point of clarity on that, I'm happy with that, is what the officer's saying is that we would then be responsible as opposed to the officer. Question is then, if it does go Pete Tong, which I don't believe it would, who's then legally responsible for it? It's my understanding is that we're approving this as a councillor. The liability would still fall with the council, as is being approved by us as councillors. That's my understanding of the legal responsibility, the legal coverage of councillors when acting as councillors.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor O'Leary, there is, it'll take me a minute to find it, but there is a, trying to think of the right word, but there is cover for councillors acting in their capacity as members against claims brought against them. If you wish to sort of carry on with the meeting, I can.
Okay, Councillor Northam, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the advice. I do believe that there's potential for an acceptable emergency plan and escape route to be derived. I think if the applicant works with the Sailing Academy and other bodies to determine such a plan, given the warning system, the alarms that we've referred to, and the fact that weather forecasts have a degree of reliability, I think such a plan could be, and it would not be based upon an evacuation plan. It would be based largely, I think, on a not opening at the wrong time plan. And I think that would make it entirely feasible. So I would like that process to proceed. Thank you.
So you're talking about approving the application subject to a satisfactory escape plan, etc., coming forward at some time in the future, in the knowledge that there isn't one available at the moment, correct?
Sorry. I don't know if there's one available at the moment, but I believe that one could be created.
I think the question is an acceptable one to the officers, and the officers are saying that at the moment it's not acceptable to them. So it's down to the committee to decide if we wish to approve on the basis that there may be one that can be derived in the near future. Just hold, bear with me. I'll just go to Councillor Weller.
Can we approve on a delegated decision to the officers to devise a suitable condition that gives escape, to mitigate the risk of, so evacuation if required, together with a condition that in unfavourable conditions the establishment isn't opened in the first place, with reference to the various warning systems and emergency systems that are already in place for that area. Should that not be possible, then clearly you would have to come back to us. But provided that we give you the approval to get that done on the basis that we want this application approved.
Members, this is still taking longer than I thought, so we've got to vote to see if we can, if you're happy to extend the meeting beyond 3 hours. Hopefully it'll be 3 hours and 1 minute. All those in favour, raise your hands. That's unanimous, so thank you. We can continue. Anne, would you like to come back on any of the comments from Councillor Weller, please?
Chair, yes, you could delegate authority to us on the understanding that if we weren't looking to approve the discharge of condition, that it would come back to you as a committee. And I have to say, based on my professional opinion at the moment, that is where this would end up, because there is nothing before me that tells me we would be able to achieve a safe evacuation plan. And we've already heard about the issue about conditioning that it not open in potential storm events and actually the enforceability around that. So yeah, I think it would be for it to come back to committee for members to determine. It wouldn't be delegated to officers.
Yeah, understood, Anne. So basically, Anne's saying that if it was left to officers, she can't foresee one being acceptable. It would have to come back to committee again. So just be aware, members, that we'd have to proceed on that basis, as that's what's basically on the table, I think, at the moment. Just bear with me. I'll just check with Phil Crowther a minute. So if we proceed on the basis, there will be no development until the acceptable flood risk. I think, well, that's the advice I've just had, and so over to you.
The development's already there, so we just need to check with Phil. We had talked about wording. Might just need to get legal advice on how we would word. So we're not, because we'd be issuing permission, wouldn't we, today, Phil, on terms of the development is already there. So normally it would be within, 1 month, 3 months or whatever, we would require a flood evacuation plan to be submitted and flood warning plan.
Thank you, Chair. So I think it would be, I think members would need to give an indication of when that plan has to come forward, and when it has to be, when that plan has to come forward and the consequences for that plan. So you could have a condition saying that submitted for approval within X amount of time, failing which the business shall cease operating until the plan was submitted. You could have a condition in those terms, I think.
Councillor O'Leary, I'm looking back to you because you were the one who came forward with this. So would you be happy with a timescale of, say, 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, for instance? Your choice is yours.
The only way forward, so I would be happy with 1 month.
Okay, so my understanding is that if you vote to approve, then this flood evacuation plan, etc., has to come back within 1 month to officers, and if they are not happy with it, it then comes back to the committee to reconsider. I'll just check in with Phil Crowther, that's correct.
Chair, that makes sense. I think that would be an acceptable condition. Members just have to bear in mind that there will inevitably be a practical lag between the month period when the plan is submitted and potentially, if it isn't acceptable, between when that can be brought back to you. So there might be a period when the business is operating without an approved plan in place where they've submitted one and it's not been formally determined. Chair, if the indulgence, just coming back to Councillor O'Leary's earlier question, there is a general indemnity that the council gives its officers its members and officers for against civil or criminal proceedings brought in the course of your duties as members. Doesn't apply if you're reckless or fraudulent about what you do, but in the exercise of this meeting, proper planning. It obviously doesn't stop somebody bringing proceedings against you, but it does indemnify you against the cost of defending those proceedings. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so I think we have a proposal, Councillor O'Leary, which was yours. Sorry, Councillor O'Leary, just hold on. Anne Collins.
Chair, I was just going to provide you with a summary of delegate authority to the service manager for development enforcement or the area manager for the area to approve, subject to conditions, 3 years, not 3 years commencement, because already commenced. The plans list, where are your conditions? Rob, you just passed me the conditions. The plans list, within 1 month of the grant of the plan permission, the submission of the flood warning and evacuation plan. Within 3 months of the date of plan permission, adherence to the flood risk assessment and the premises not to be used for the purpose permitted outside the hours of 11 a.m. to 2300 hours, 7 days a week, with the exact wording to be agreed with you, Chairman.
Thank you. It seems as though it sums everything up. Councillor O'Leary, did you get that, and is that what you're happy with as a proposal?
Chairman, I am happy.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Bell is seconding this. In that case, we do have a proposal and a seconder. All those in favour of the proposal as stated by Anne Collins and Councillor O'Leary. That is unanimous. So in that case, the application is approved subject to the conditions as stated by the officer. Right, thank you very much. We haven't quite finished yet. I'm just going to say urgent items, there are no urgent items, and exempt business, there isn't any. So just before 1 o'clock we finished. Thank you all very much for your efforts. It's not been an easy one, but I think you've done very, very well. And see you soon. Cheers.